To talk more about any African perspectives on this, we're joined by South African sports correspondent Allie from Cape Town. What's been the reaction to the idea of a Winter World Cup amongst the clubs and the governing body in South Africa, indeed the rest of the continent?
Well, the Confederation of African Football, CAF, have expressed their support for the idea, and generally I think across the African continent there is support for the idea to move the World Cup to a Winter World Cup, which is November, December, because it's just unfeasible to have a World Cup in the heart of summer in the Middle East, where temperatures go as high as 50 degrees, and I understand temperatures are around about 25 degrees Celsius at the time when they are planning to host the World Cup in Qatar in 2022. It would mean, obviously, that they would have to reorganize the CAF Champions League and the Confederations Cup, because those finals and the closing stages of those tournaments are normally played towards the end of November, early December. And it would probably also mean that CAF would have to reorganize and reschedule the 2023 African Cup of Nations, which is scheduled for Guinea, and that normally starts in early January, running to February. But as FIFA have said, that there are 7 years in which the calendars and schedules can be reorganized. So it's not like it's being sprung as a surprise upon them. And I guess it's probably the only realistic solution, because there's absolutely no ways that the teams can play in that kind of heat. Probably the teams will be able to play in the air-conditioned stadiums, but for the fans who form a major part of the World Cup tradition, it certainly would be unfeasible.
Okay, you mentioned it a little bit, but tell us a bit more about how this would impact on the leagues and competitions in Africa.
Well, in Africa, obviously, they would have to change the closing stages, the timing of the closing stages of the Confederation and the Champions League. And many of the African countries have their leagues running from, according to the calendar year. So it runs normally from March until December, and they would have to reschedule. South Africa and several of the North African countries run their schedules according to the European calendar, which is from about August until May the following year. And they would probably have to reschedule their breaks because most of the leagues take a break over the festive season, and with talk of the World Cup final taking place either on the 18th or 23rd of December, they would probably have to reschedule their festive season break. But I don't think it's a major train smash for the African countries to reschedule the leagues. And as Jerome Valk, the FIFA Secretary General, has said, that there is 7 years in which to change that. And the African countries normally make allowances for the Africa Cup of Nations, for example, where in South Africa, for example, we didn't have football between the 20th of December until the end of the Africa Cup of Nations in early February.
Now, we showed it a bit earlier, but the European leagues have called for compensation, which today has been ruled out by FIFA Secretary General Jerome Valk. Now, what message do you think FIFA is sending by ruling that out?
Well, I think, once they're going to start talking about compensation and you're talking about massive clubs, you're talking about multi-billion-dollar clubs like Real Madrid, Barcelona, and if they were going to accede to demands, it's going to be a massive financial burden on FIFA if they were going to accede to demands for financial compensation. So I think FIFA has probably taken the right step by putting their foot down. And also they've got the backing of UEFA President Michel Platini. They've got the backing of most of the confederations around the world as well. So I don't think it will be too hard a sell for FIFA to get the clubs to come along with their idea. And of course, all this needs to be ratified at the next FIFA executive meeting on the 19th and 20th of March. But realistically, it's probably the only viable date to have it in November and December, particularly if you look at the possible clash. There was talk of around about April, between March and May, but that apparently will clash with the 2022 Winter Olympics as well. So it's just not a viable solution. And I think even some of the English pundits have said it might favor England to have the World Cup at the end of the year, because normally when the World Cup takes place in June, July, it's at the end of a long season, and many of the players are very tired. They look forward to their break. And now, with the possible scheduling in November, December, it could be that the players are actually running into peak form, into peak match fitness, and it might actually benefit, most, and I think it will probably benefit the tournament as a whole, that, players don't go to the World Cup at the end of a long season. And if you have top players players playing in the European Champions League final. They've had a long campaign in their domestic league. They've had long campaign in European competition, and they do. I mean, we've had many cases where top players have been injured going into a World Cup. So this it might be an unintended consequence of the World Cup actually seeing fitter players and better conditioned players that are taking part in the tournament.
Okay, finally now, Mo, why do you think FIFA has so much support that they can literally tear up their own rules to suit their own purpose?
Well, I think because FIFA is simply a very, very powerful organization, and they do have the support, particularly of the smaller confederations in Asia, in Africa, in Central and South America, because they do spend a lot of money, a lot of the finance that they gain, the revenue that they gain from broadcasting deals from the World Cup. They do spend a lot of money. They do, some might call it dispensing patronage, but they do spend a lot of money in those particular confederations to grow the game of football. And I think, which is why Sepp Blatter has already been assured of the support of the African contingent when the FIFA elections do come around in May. And by the same token, I mean, Blatter has been under pressure from the bigger confederations like UEFA, but it does have the support of the smaller confederations simply because FIFA has been able to, what many people may say, dispense patronage, but they have been able to finance many of the smaller confederations and smaller federations around the world.
Okay, Mo, Allie, thank you again for speaking to Sports News Africa.